welcome to the May 6th Armchair Artwalk Tour. We've been doing this for over a year now, and it's really a privilege to be able to talk to these artists. I just want to give a shout out to my friend Larson Gormley, who is right over here helping me do this. It makes me it makes it in the spirit of continuous improvement. I think we're making great strides into improving the production values, and I'm really glad that you're here. I met Larson when he was a student at Polo High School. That was what, 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like we're not any older. So tonight we have some really amazing guests, and it's my honor to introduce Steve Shriver. Steve is a local artist, and Steve is in his studio. And Steve, can you tell us about your home?
Sure. I live in a house that was built in 1931 in the Portuguese Bend area, and it was built by an architect named Gordon Kaufman, who, as he was finishing this house, was going up to Hoover Dam, where he did all of the design work for the Hoover Dam. He also did the downtown LA Times building. He designed the Hollywood Palladium, Santa Anita Racetrack, whole bunch of landmarks around LA. And our house was actually built as the servants' quarters for a bigger house that never got built because of the Depression. That the owner, the guy who was building it, came out here from New York. He was a stockbroker, and he said, "Yeah, that looks really nice, but I don't have any money." So he lived in it for a little while, but he didn't have money to complete the house.
Yeah, and it's really, how many years ago we did a gathering for the Grand there, and it was one of the most wonderful evenings. It's really a magical place. It's built around a courtyard, and your studio is, what was the carriage part? Or
it was part of the garage. I actually built the wall, and I have an air compressor and a gas tank in the studio from back in the days.
So your career as an artist, how did you get started? Who influenced you? Did your parents encourage you?
They didn't discourage me. When I went to college, I knew that I wanted to do something that was creative, which boiled down to music, writing, or art. And art sort of turned out to be the one. There were a lot of incredible musicians at the college I went to, and that intimidated me, being sort of fresh off the block. And writing, I just didn't have the discipline for. The artwork, I could still smoke a little something or other and make some art, and that got me through to my senior year. And really, since college, art has been my primary thrust. I've worked for a variety of places, and I worked at a gallery in New York for a few years in the early years, and then I found out that we were going to be having babies number 2 and 3 coming at the same time in 1988, and so we moved back to the West Coast to be near the in-laws, and I knew that Marianne was going to be very busy taking care of 3 kids, and so I had to figure out a way to make money, and it turned out to be decorative painting. And I think my first venture into that was I painted marbleized columns for Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, and that career went on for a good 20 years, and it took me all over the world. That part was fun. It took me to Japan and to Mexico City and Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and a lot of other places in between. And that was fun, but the traveling obviously was a little hard for the family to do. And so about around 1998, I started doing, I was looking into doing backgrounding for animation. And the time I had to do drawing was while I was driving my car to other jobs. And so I got very good at holding my drawing pad on the steering wheel while I was driving. And, I would do action drawing while I was doing that. And that turned into that first show that I'm pretty sure you were there in the old, what is now the Warner Annex, used to be Dave Meffert's studio at one point. And I had a show in the downstairs of that space on 6th Street in maybe 2000, I guess. And then it's just been bits and pieces. I've worked a lot since that time. I sort of wanted to get out of decorative painting, but I had a call from a guy who said that he had a house and that he needed some paint repair work done. And so I went up to look at the house, which is in the Palisades, right near the old Getty Villa. And it was a house that was built by Anthony Heinsbergen, who
Wow.
decorated in the Warner Grand, and he did a lot of theaters around town. He did the Pantages, he did the Wiltern, he did stuff in the downtown Biltmore Hotel. He painted all over the place. In fact, I think his company did 600 or 700 projects over its lifetime.
Yeah, he was really prolific. It's a shame that a lot of that archive has gone missing, but
yeah,
it was really amazing. You also did a mural in Redondo, right?
Where I did a public mural in Hermosa Beach.
Oh, right, Hermosa.
That's up off of Pier Avenue and Cypress Street. And right now I'm I'm helping another guy who has a commission to do the largest mural I've ever worked on, which is on the backside of the old Bijou Theater that's down on Hermosa Avenue. It's now a bank or something anonymous, but the backside faces the ocean, and we're doing a mural of as if the wall was peeling away and you could see the old Hermosa Biltmore hotel inside of the building.
Oh,
so
cool.
That's the illusion. And it's fun. It's challenging working that big. It's 50 feet high by 90 feet wide. So it would be like doing the whole back wall of the Warner Grand there. Like the whole back wall.
Yeah, right. So do you have some work to show us today?
Yeah, I have some things that I can just, let's see, I'll see if you can see it. Oh, here. That should be it. Can you see that?
I remember seeing this in your studio when you did was it at an arty party?
What's that? Sorry.
I remember seeing this in your studio at an arty party in the past.
It's still hanging over there. I could, if I tilted my camera, I could show it to you. But yeah, this was, and basically I'm just talking about the last 5 years of stuff that I've done. So in 2016, I was doing this. Actually, I was painting it in 2015, and I think I had pretty much finished this image of it. And then a rather cataclysmic, I was on my bicycle and I got run over by a car, and it was, a lot of things got broken, including
that was scary. We came to see you after when that happened.
Yeah. So, oh God, sorry, pushed the wrong button. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay, so this is what the panel that I was getting ready for a conference that I go to every year that's a conference of decorative painters. And this year it was being held in St. Petersburg, and they told us to make panels that reflected your hometown. So that's the palm tree going up the middle of it, and the car ornaments. And I have a detail here that shows a little more of the ornamental aspects of it. I'm really into ornament and its place in art, and the way that ornament doesn't have to be pooty and little lion heads and things like that. It can be stuff from real life. I mean, that's how it was made always in the past. And after the accident, I was stuck in a hospital bed for quite a while. And one of the first, what's that? Yeah, in the living room. Yeah, exactly. And one of the first things I started doing was drawing, just to make sure that I could still do it. And this was on the mantle of the fireplace, which was right in front of me. And I started doing little bits of ornamental things. Some elements of this are copied from books. And oh, this one is, this is actually my, it's my take. This guy, I should have shown this first. This is an artist named Carlo Crivelli, who was lived in the 1500s. And when I was learning art history, this was one of the first images that I saw as a demonstration of single point perspective. You know, that was kind of their point, is that the 1500s is really when they figured out perspective. And if you'll notice at the bottom, I don't know if you can see my pointer arrow, but at the bottom of this, the image is a pickle and an apple sitting on the front step of that thing. And that was what I was drawing here, the pickle and the apple. And Crivelli often included a pickle in his pictures. Don't know why, but it was a small theme for him. Oh, there it is, up close and personal. So I was doing some drawings where I was thinking about different types of ornament and how modern ornament, you know, the front of a car, artists really spend a lot of time, and especially in the 1950s, it was handmade expressions of what a car is. And, you know, it obviously has a facial aspect to it, and it's the ornament, really, the design of the car is what makes people buy it. You know, that's why people go, oh, I like the face of that, or I like the color, I like the way the chrome looks on that. And that's kind of what I was riffing on here. And this was one of the first paintings that I did after after I was in recovery. And I think I improv'd this one, unlike some of the later ones, which I did pencil sketches for, but this one just came out of the studio. Those two little skulls are, they are possum skulls that I have in the studio. And the rest of it was just reflections on bicycles and cars. And there it is with a more ornate frame that I put on it later. This is another one sort of on that, it's called The Days of Future Fast. So it's talking about the car culture that we live here in LA and how that can be an ornamental item if seen in the right way. And this is a style of ornament that I love. It's called auricular, which means ear-like. And auricular ornament was started in 1620, and that's about when this print comes from. And they were primarily designed as designs for metalworking, like silver or gold. And I can you keep me a little bit posted on time, because I can go on forever about stuff.
I know you can. Well, why don't we do a few more pieces? And did you say how you were trained, or are you self-taught?
I did go to school, and I majored in art at school, and I I did representational work when I was there. My senior show was stuff that I was looking at, and but then really the decorative paint work was a challenge, not only to learn the ornamental forms, but also to be able to, ornamental painting, people ask you to paint anything they want. And, so you have to have a massive library of resources, of references. And I do have a gigantic photo library on my computer, excuse me. And then a lot of my learning, really how to do that stuff, was either books or just doing it. It was a lot of DIY learning along the way.
I understand. And it's fascinating. So can you show us another piece? And then
Yes, I have a lot. This was actually my drawing of an auricular design, which is, I like auricular. I mean, you think about in 1620, they were making stuff that looked like this. And, most ornament at that time was very conventional. It looked like typical moldings, like off of a Greek or a Roman building. Whereas this stuff was like, I think Salvador Dali was looking hard at auricular design, because it's crazy. I mean, it's organic and strange, and I think it cut a lot of new ground in those departments. So this was my drawing of, I was definitely thinking a lot about, across the top there, it says, treasure every moment of your normalcy. And that's kind of how I felt sitting in bed. It's like, we don't need that much. We just want it to be normal,
right. And I think that's true now these days, that we crave whatever normal is becoming.
Yeah. So there was a painting that came out of that design.
Wow.
And this was when I did start doing designs for the drawings. This is another one that goes back to that auricular design in the beginning, with a bicycle fork in the area, a gear in the center of it, which I took great pleasure in drawing that. And then this was the more ornate frame that I put on probably a year later, but this is in the auricular style, and auricular is used for framing from back then in the 1600s. And they would have actually carved it most likely, as opposed to my painted version. But
well, these are fascinating. I had no idea that the roots of this work went so deep, and that you've done this amazing research to back it up. So it's really lovely that you can talk about your work and share your journey with us today. So I really appreciate it.
well,
I'm
thank
hoping
you.
that we can get together in December for the arty party again.
I hope so too. I mean, if anybody here knows, we've been doing the party here at our house for oh God, my sister actually started it with her beads in the 1990s. And then I horned in on the action when I was doing my own stuff. And that was probably around 2000. And so we've been doing it every December since then, and every December except last year, and which obviously was out of the question. But
Of course, of course. Well, it's a lovely party, and thank you for sharing your work.
sure,
You can stop screen sharing now
okay, thank
and
you.
hang on with us.
Yep.
And we're thank you for being here. It's really great to see you, and I owe you a hug in person.
I'll take it. Can
Okay.
I put it in my hug bank?
Of course, I owe you one.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on to Rebecca Forster. Rebecca and I met thousands of years ago. I was doing a series at the Warner Grand on, oddly enough, on first Thursdays. It was all authors, and we put the audience on stage, and the author's back was to the audience. So the audience really got a sense of what it was like to, perform on that stage. And Rebecca, how did you start writing mystery novels?
um, Actually, I started writing in romance because somebody dared me to do it. So I had never actually written anything before. I was working in advertising, and one of my clients was married to a famous author. I just didn't know she was famous at the time. And I made the mistake of saying, oh, I could do that. And somebody dared me to do it. And I thought, what a lark. And lo and behold, my first book was bought. I couldn't believe it. So I did start writing romance because you didn't need an agent back then. It was just something fun I was doing. But then I really found a passion for writing, and I absolutely loved it. The only problem was I wasn't very good at romance. So I got fired. and
Issues with love, I've noticed.
I do. Despite the fact that I have a very long marriage, I do have problems with love. Somebody once described my idea of romance as a quick chuck on the shoulder, and that's it. So I got fired because my editor said I couldn't keep killing people before they got in bed. So I realized, I think that is a hint I should not be writing in this genre. And as soon as I switched over to thrillers, everything just took off, and I've been doing it for, 36 years now, and have published 40 books. So
Wow.
yeah, so I think thrillers was the right call.
And there are a number, I don't know how to say this, but a number of different characters that you write about, right?
Yeah, I have actually 2 series, and the series thing kind of happened strangely also, but the series were kind of born once Kindle came on the scene. It turned out readers were still the same and still looking for, well-written books. But for some reason, with the advent of Kindle, series became the really popular way to go. So I do have 2 different series, and I'm independent now. I had worked for New York publishers like Penguin Putnam, HarperCollins for 25 years. And then Kindle happened and gave us a lot more leeway to publish, the things we really love to write about, maybe be a little more adventurous, because we had control over what we were doing. And so with the advent of digital publishing and the ability to make my own hardcover books, etc., I was able to expand some of the characters that had started in New York, and then also start other series. So I have 2 series and a number of standalone books. So yeah, it's nice. I can wake up one morning and say, oh, I think I'll do a standalone today, or gee, I'll add to this series tomorrow. It's very liberating.
And it's Finn O'Brien and Josie Bates.
Yes, Josie Bates actually is the most popular series. That one's been translated into a couple of languages and has had 3 million downloads. So that really still shocks me when I think about that. And I'm so delighted people like her. She actually is living in Hermosa Beach, and people like her so much. I actually have had fans say they went to Hermosa Beach to the Mermaid and asked if she'd be in. And of course she doesn't exist. Right. So that was kind of, it made me feel wonderful, but it was also like, wow, that's incredible that people are that engaged with her. And I love this series because it's kind of all over the South Bay. It always goes back to Hermosa Beach, but it goes as far as Hawaii and Albania and comes back to Hermosa Beach. And then the latest one in this series takes place in San Pedro at the port, which has always been a fascinating place for me.
And the current Finn O'Brien one, there's something happens at the brewery, right?
Actually,
don't tell me how it ends. I'm not done with it.
I won't tell you how it ends, but the current book, which was just released yesterday, is a very strange book because it's not just the brewery, which is the largest artist colony, as I understand it, in the world, and it's down in East LA. My son lived there for a while. It's a very dystopian looking, community, and just perfect for, lots of murders. So the place was really fabulous. But what really started this was a couple of years ago, and it stuck in my mind. I got a phone call from the Guardian newspaper, and the reporter was asking me how I felt about my books being used for Google's Alphabet Brain project, in which they were feeding books into artificial intelligence. Well, I had no idea my books were being used in this way. And to this day, I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. But so that began the inspiration for Intimate Relations. The place was, of course, the brewery. And then I found out that there was an artist at the brewery who specializes in sex dolls. And so all that kind of came together into,
okay.
This is not what you're thinking. I see you over there. This is not what, it's strictly a thriller, but it is a fascinating, once I started the research on robotics, artificial intelligence, this huge industry of sex dolls, it became so fascinating. It just had to be a book. So there you have it. That's Intimate Relations. And I won't tell you how it ends, but I think it's pretty cool the way it ends. But what are you going to say?
Okay, you don't tell me anymore. I don't want to know how it ends.
I won't.
So when you were growing up, did you ever imagine that you'd be married to a judge and an author?
No. On both counts, actually. I knew he was going to be a lawyer, and I was kind of looking forward to, that part of it. I sort of envisioned myself at the top of Palos Verdes, but not quite there, but that's okay. And he has been absolutely essential. Once I started writing, first of all, as all three of us know, if you don't have a partner or someone really, being your cheerleader when you're in a creative career, it is very difficult. And so my family has been so supportive. It's just been amazing. But Steve, while he's a judge, and he was a criminal judge for a long time, and handled quite a few high profile cases, the Suge Knight case, and he did some work on the OJ case with the grand jury, et cetera. So I had a real bird's eye view of what goes on in the court system. And I'm such a justice voyeur anyway. Anything that has to do with cops and judges and lawyers, I absolutely eat it up. But he was also a federal prosecutor specializing in organized crime and terrorism when we were first married, which gave me insight into the DEA, the FBI, ATF, all those things. So when I did transition from corporate work to a creative career, it does seem kind of natural that I would veer toward thrillers and toward legal procedurals and police procedurals, because that's what, I was living with. It's like,
sure.
Yeah, come home for dinner. What'd you do, honey? Oh, I had to go to a safe city to talk to one of the, defendants. And it's like, oh, cool. So, it's really interesting.
So do you have something that you're going to read for us and put it in context?
I will read for you, but the first caveat I'm going to say is I am not an actress, nor am I a great audiobook person, so you're going to have to forgive me for the reading. Here's I don't know if you can see. So here's the cover, and it's got a picture of the port So this gentleman looking out at the port, which is one of my absolutely favorite views ever. I just love going over the bridge and seeing the port and seeing the containers being, you know, plucked off ships and things like that. I've always found it very mysterious and very noir. So
That's our
it,
view as well, and it's always changing. It's
it,
fascinating.
it is just a fabulous place. It really is. Sometimes I just go down there for lunch just so I can feel what it's like down there. So this book takes place on an old container ship that was due to dock, and it doesn't make it to the port because, as we all know, ships are backed up like crazy, and so it has to sit out for a while. And what has happened, unbeknownst to the captain, is there is a dead man in the anchor room and quite gruesomely killed. There is also a mate who has been attacked and is not doing well. So we have one that's alive, we have one that's dead, and we have another mate who is trying to get off the ship. So I'm going to start with that, and I'll just do about 5 minutes. Is that okay?
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay, sounds good. So this is an excerpt from Lost Witness. Day 1, 2:30 a.m. He lay back against the wall, arms close to his body, feet tight together, burrowed into a corner under a ladder beside a blue container. Once again, his name crackled over the intercom, but he didn't respond to the captain's command to report. Throughout the ship, his mates called out for him in their many accents, but he stayed quiet. While he could identify each of their voices, it was impossible to be sure of their positions because the Ferret Wield was like any other container ship, a massive steel shell crisscrossed with wires, mazed with pipes, connected by a labyrinth of catwalks and cavernous spaces that were packed with giant metal boxes. It was cold in places, hot in others, and oven-like near the engines, but mostly the interior of the Ferret Wield was cold. There were crawl spaces where voices were nearly lost and vast expanses where they became distorted. He had misjudged only a moment ago, thinking one of his mates was aft. Instead, he found the man almost on top of him, cutting off his escape via the gangway, ruining his first plan. That first plan had been the best. When the ship docked, he had intended to make his way off the Ferret Wield, losing himself in the crush of men who would be tending to the cargo. Once away, he could tell the authorities what he knew of the matter in the anchor room and make sure his injured mate was taken away and cared for. But the ship was not hurtling toward port with the body of the dead man. No one was calling for medical attention for his mate. That meant he would not have a chance to slip off the Ferret Wield unnoticed. The lowering of the anchor only confirmed his injured mate's warning that no one aboard this ship could be trusted. Knowing a life hung in the balance, the second escape plan was to lower the gangway while at anchor, slip into the water and swim for it. That could easily be done without assistance, and he could maneuver the gangway into position a few feet from the water's surface. That would make his escape safe and, if luck held, unnoticeable for a good long while. Then he could. It didn't matter what he could have done because now he was trapped below deck with the African blocking his way, taking a smoke, cutting off the route to the gangway. It would have been easy to take him down, but the young man had seen enough blood in his life to last for eternity. And, truth be told, he liked the African, so he eased away unseen and hurried down to another deck. The captain's voice came over the intercom, ever more strident, ordering him to report to the bridge. Instead, he went on his own way, mirroring the movements of those who searched for him, dodging them when they turned away, becoming a shadow when they looked toward his hiding place. They went right, he went left. They shined a light forward, he slipped behind a container aft. He climbed down the metal ladders with the care of a thief, waiting for the sighs and groans of the ship to cover his movements. He went down another shorter ladder, jumped the last 2 rungs and hit the ground running. He ducked under pipes big enough for a man to stand in, touched the smaller ones and avoided the steaming ones. He stayed close to the containers that were filled with things people needed and things they didn't need but would buy anyway. Skirting around the last container, he crouched with his fingertips on the cold floor, pulled his lips together tight, and tried to breathe evenly. When he saw no one and heard nothing, he gave one last look around, whispered a prayer of sorts, and went for plan 3, the hydraulic door. It was as wide as 10 men standing fingertip to fingertip, and as tall as 3 standing atop one another's shoulders. The engines were quiet as they lay at anchor, but that didn't mean they were silent. He heard the sounds of the ship and felt the strain of every piece of metal that held the old vessel together. Above all of it, he heard the thud of his heart. Suddenly dizzy, he put his back against the wall, doubled over, and spit out blood. He had run into a pipe in the dark and could feel that one of his teeth was loose. There was a knot on his head. These were minor things compared to what he had seen in the anchor room. The memory of that made him ill, and for a moment he considered going to the captain or enlisting the African's help. He would ask to simply stay by his mate's side and accept what consequences came. But the moment passed. He had been warned. His head snapped toward a sound. His hand went to the zippered pocket of his pants, where he safeguarded the thing his mate had thrust upon him. Take it to an important person. His ears pricked. One man, maybe 2, were coming, though it sounded as if they were still far away. Tell them my name. He remembered the look of desperation in his mate's eyes. Take it, tell them. The words had been spoken like a dying wish. He shook his head, refusing to accept that this was the end. Not his mate's, not his. That was why he had to go.
Wow.
And we'll leave it there.
Oh, cool. You know, my dad introduced me to police procedurals, and I've been rereading Robert B. Parker, and so I'm so looking forward to have a whole stack more to read.
Okay, good. Well, thank you so much for being a thriller lover. That's very nice. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It was lovely to hear you read it in your own words. I think sometimes it means a lot more when you hear it read by the author.
And the author keeps trying to edit while they're reading, so that's why we don't read very often.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Hang on.
Thank
We
you.
have a few more things to do, and we'll be back to you at the end.
This is awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Larson, can we go to the slides? So there's one that says something about, let's see, we don't have to do the guests, but the next one. Oh, we know who we are. So I just wanted to spend a little time. Some of you were involved with us on a series of stakeholder meetings about redesigning and bringing back First Thursday. And we're not quite ready to announce when we can do it, but preliminarily we're thinking that we might have like a soft opening, all things considered, with the rules about all this. We're in the yellow tier right now. And then really bring it back for Fleet Week, which is the beginning of September. So stay tuned. We'll be back in touch with you to see where we are and how we're going to promote it, and where we're going to take it from there. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Keep going. Just wanted to make a little plug for the Arts District. If you're into jigsaw puzzles, we made a jigsaw puzzle, which is the trumpet player in the mural that's in the Lillian Furman walkway. And you can find that on our website. And then there's also 3 retail outlets: Sirens, which is where this mural behind me we painted is, at Crafted, and at the corner store. So, okay, I'm done with the commercial. So I'm going to move on to Alon Davidson. Alon is the cantor at Temple Bethel. And so Alon, did you know from day one that you wanted to be a cantor, or did you have musical talent that, moved you along? Or
so I knew from day one that I wanted to sing. I think even before I could speak, I was singing. and always had a great passion and love for singing, performing. And lots of other people around me knew from day two that I was going to be a cantor, and I didn't. But but I actually started training to be a cantor when I was 5 years old. Um, I
Bar
was
mitzvah training.
yeah, it was way before bar mitzvah training even. But I come from a long line of cantors, actually many generations of cantors in my family on my paternal grandfather's side, and dating back to Russia, and then eventually immigrating to Israel, but immigrating back in 1889 to Israel. So long before it was Israel, I believe at that time it was actually under the Ottoman Empire, and then soon later became Palestine under the British Empire. And my grandfather actually broke the chain. So my grandfather broke the chain not because he didn't love chazanut, or the art of the cantor, because he did, and he was trained in it, and he knew, and he had a beautiful voice, but he also knew that he had a country to build. So he broke the chain, and built a country, along with many others of his generation, and then interestingly enough, it skipped. Not just him, but it skipped my father's generation. Although my father was actually a biblical scholar, and knew his Bible backwards and forwards, because in those days he had to have a major when he was in high school. And while agriculture was really his focus because of his familial tie to our orchards and things like that, his major had to be in Bible, and so he had a great knowledge of Bible. But then my sister and I both took up the art, and were trained by our cantor growing up. Our cantor Philip Modell, where I grew up in Anaheim, of all places, in the House of the Mouse. Grew up very close to Mr. Mickey, and in fact, we oftentimes joked that our synagogue, which was Temple Beth Emet, was, a lot of people called it Congregation Beit Mickey, because we were so close to Disneyland. But our cantor was actually kind of the cantor's cantor. He was really one of the greats of his generation, and he trained both my sister and myself. And in those days, women weren't being trained to lead services and to sing.
In my generation, girls were not really bar mitzvah, bas mitzvah.
Right, exactly. My sister fell into that generation as well, and but still, she had a passion for it. She sang in the choir. I sang in the choir starting at the age of 5, and we all had this great passion for the liturgical music of the synagogue that we were growing up in, and our cantor trained us and taught us. And when I was a little boy, he was this amazing human being. He grew up he was born in Germany. He actually competed in the Winter Olympic Games for the German team. This is pre World War II, and he, when the Holocaust happened, he was able to escape and go to Ireland, and then eventually to Israel, and then finally to the United States. So he had a very strange accent, and he used to call me the wicked boy, wicked boy, come over here. And he would have me come over, and he would have me lead portions of the service, even as a 6, 7, 8-year-old. He would have me come up and lead parts of the service. So it was always very frightening to come to services, because I never knew what might happen or what I might be called upon to do. And I didn't always want to. So he knew that I should be a cantor. My parents felt that I should be a cantor. So many people around me felt I should be a cantor. And I did what every single self-respecting teenager does when people tell them they need to be something. I ran away. And went and studied music, went and studied opera and musical theater, and thought I would have a career on the stage, and really loved the stage, but didn't necessarily love who I became as a part of that. I started to realize that although I played the game really well, and I had the ego that could handle it, I didn't like who I was. And if you don't like who you are when you look in the mirror, you shouldn't be that person.
Exactly. How did you find your way to San Pedro?
So that's a great story, actually. My first venture into San Pedro was about 30 years ago. About 30 years ago, I had a very dear friend who was an artist at UC Irvine, where I was an undergrad, and she had just finished her MFA in studio art. And she said to me, "Hey, I'm moving to this place. I found this great studio, and it's a great place." It was down on Pacific and First, by the way. And she said, "Hey, will you help me move?" She and her husband. They said, "Will you help us move?" I said, "Of course, absolutely. We're friends. I'll help you move." And I said, "Where are you moving to?" They said, "It's this place called San Pedro." I said, "This place called what?" I had no idea where San Pedro was. They said, "Yeah, it's right at the end of the 110 freeway." I said, "Oh, the 110, I recognize that. I know the 110. So I helped them move in, and we had an amazing time helping them move in, helping them build up their studio. I would come and spend a lot of weekends with them, and got to know the town a little bit. And then a couple of years later, ended up getting a call to come and teach 7th grade in the religious school at Temple Bethel in San Pedro. To which I responded, "There are Jews in San Pedro?" And I'm sure there are people on this program, watching this program right now, who are like, "There are Jews in San Pedro?" Which is totally fine. But Temple Bethel actually is one of the oldest synagogues in all of Los Angeles. We are coming up on our 100th birthday in
Wow.
2023. Temple Bethel originally started, and I've sung in this place. It originally started in the building which is now the Italian American Club. And when I was in college, I actually came and sang arias at the Italian American Club with one of my colleagues and friends, and had no idea again where San Pedro was until I got there. And then eventually found myself, as I said, coming to teach at Temple Bethel on 7th Street, which is where they moved in 1956. So when I came to teach there, one of the leaders of the congregation said to me at one point, "Hey, I hear you're a cantor too." And I said, "Well, yeah, but I'm not sure that that's really what I want to do. I'm really devoted to kids and education, and that's what I'm doing. That's where I am." And he says, "Well, I didn't say I want to hire you, but we're looking for a new cantor. I'd love to see your resume and maybe have you interview." The rest, as they say, is history. I fell in love with the community. I fell in love with the then Rabbi David Lieb, who was the rabbi of Temple Bethel for 34 years.
Wow.
May he rest in peace. He was an amazing human being, and I came to Temple Bethel in San Pedro, and that was now 26 years ago that I started as the
Rabbi,
cantor.
Rabbi Briskin, and then the current rabbi, right?
Correct. So actually, in my tenure, we've had 4 rabbis. We had Rabbi Lieb, of course, of blessed memory first, then Rabbi Briskin, who was with us for about 12, 13 years. And then we had an interim rabbi, Rabbi Doug Cohn, who came in for a year. And now we have an amazing new rabbi, Rabbi Cassie Kale, the first female rabbi in the history of Temple Bethel. And actually, she is celebrating this coming weekend the 10th anniversary of her ordination. So she is a young and excited and an amazing rabbi. She's so knowledgeable and so caring, and really has embraced our not just our temple community, but the San Pedro community. As she and I both serve with our San Pedro Faith Consortium, and work with a lot of do a lot of interfaith work within San Pedro, helping the homeless and helping those who are in need, and working with our colleagues. across many faiths.
Awesome, awesome. You had to really pivot hard when the COVID hit, right? I went to high holiday services at Temple Bethel on Zoom, which I was really glad to be able to do.
Isn't it great? I
It's
have
actually,
to, I have to say it's amazing. We pivoted very quickly, and you're right, very hard. We pivoted already last, I believe our first Zoom service was last April. We pivoted very fast because we knew that we had to continue to serve our people. And we also knew that this was an opportunity to serve a greater community, to be able to be there for not just the members of Temple Bethel, but all the many members of other places and non-members, non-Jewish members, non-affiliated Jews in the area who had no place to go at that point. You know, the buildings were closed, and where were they going? And we pivoted to Zoom right away, started really doing a lot of research on technology and figuring out how to create the best environment that we could. And at the same time, the rabbi and I really focused on outreach and reaching out to all of our members by phone. And we had a whole phone tree that built up immediately to reach out to those in our community and make sure they were all okay, and really care for them. And we have built an incredibly caring community within COVID. And in this virtual world where even members who have moved far away, some as far as like Oregon, and some people who live in New York and Texas and stuff like that, they've all started coming to services with us and coming to our programs. And we've kept a very robust programming schedule where we have programs almost every day of the week for people. And we've kept that going. We've kept that going as much as we can so that we could really take care of folks where they are and where they need us. And we plan that even when we return to in-person, we will return in a hybrid fashion so that we can continue to reach those people who can't come into the building and can't be there.
oh, that's so totally awesome. And I think that this period of this great reset really underscores that our connections, our heart connections are still strong. And they're even, I mean, I get a lot of people throw down on Zoom and they're tired of it, and Facebook as well, but it keeps us in each other's hearts. And I think that's what's really important, to not only maintain connection, but to sustain each other.
Absolutely agreed. Absolutely agreed. It's so important for us. And it's important for us to not just think about our own personal communities, but to realize that we're looking at a global community that is in need. And we provide these opportunities. And we've had, we have life cycle events and everything that needs to happen. We've been able to bring and pivot to Zoom. Funerals where people can attend that wouldn't normally be able to attend, even if we didn't have COVID, and realizing how much we've been able to really reach out to the greater community through this.
It's really an exciting time in fomenting lots of change. And sometimes it's overwhelming, but I think that it's really very positive. Were you going to perform something? Maybe?
I would be so happy to. I would be very, very happy to. Actually, one of the last things that we were able to celebrate, believe it or not, before COVID hit last January, we were able to celebrate my 25th anniversary at Temple Bethel. And as part of that celebration, I was able to reach out to many, many songwriting friends and colleagues, and I asked them as a gift to me for my 25th anniversary to compose a new piece of liturgy, which then I was able to go into the studio and record with some incredible musicians. And I myself composed two of the pieces that went onto that album. That album, actually, the works of that album, it's called God Is in This Place. And it's available on bandcamp.com, which
it's in the link. It's in the
I see
chat
the link in our chat, exactly. But But this is one of the pieces that I composed for that album. This is a legato D. I happen to I mentioned that I come from a long line of clergy, and if we go back to some of the great mystics of Sfat, one of the northern cities of Israel. Many of us know it as Safed. But the great mystics, one of the great mystics there, Shlomo Halevi Alkabetz, composed this piece of liturgy welcoming the Sabbath bride, welcoming the Sabbath into our midst. And he happens to be a distant relative of mine. And so I chose this particular text to set. And I also chose, I think, a melody. I wrote a melody that I think really represents kind of that beauty of the Eastern Jewish sound. So I hope you enjoy it. It's Legato D, and it says, "Come, beloved, come, Sabbath bride, into our midst." אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לקראת שבת, לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה מחשבה תחילה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה. בואי ושלום, עטרת בלה, בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה.
That was amazing.
Oh, Oh, thank you so much. Thank you
have
so
a
much.
lovely voice. That was terrific. I grew up with cantors that really couldn't carry a tune.
I'm sorry to hear that, but everyone is always welcome at Temple Bethel. We really are just, I believe, very unique in being an incredibly welcoming, incredibly warm community, and anyone of any faith is always welcome within our doors. Eventually, again, and certainly on Zoom with us anytime we have a program or anything that we're offering a service of any sort. Everyone is welcome. I will just offer that anyone who is interested in getting more information about programming at Temple Bethel, we have a weekly email, and people can absolutely email our temple office, TBE office at bethelsp.org. That's BETHELSP.org. And ask to be put on our weekly email list. It is not about membership. It's about community. And we always want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to be engulfed in the love and warmth of our community.
I so appreciate that. And I've been really disconnected from my Jewish side. And so I'm really happy to host you today and understand a little tiny bit more about how talented you are. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Linda. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So hang on. Can we go back to the slides, Larson? Was that the next one in the?
I know.
No worries. It's good that you know more than one way to do something.
Yeah.
So that was the next slide. Yeah. Okay. So I want to thank all our guests for being here today. As you know, I was going to talk to that. Okay, I'm not going to talk to that slide. So I want to thank everybody for being here. It's really wonderful that you keep this art walk tradition alive, and it's so wonderful to talk to people on this level and share information that's not just artists talking to artists, but artists opening their heart and their work to people who really appreciate art. So I want to thank you all for being here. Next slide. As you know, Pat Carroll, who will have left us almost a year ago, started in-person art walk tours probably 10 years ago. And we do this in her memory. We're really appreciative to the work that she did. She was our first chair of the San Pedro Waterfront Arts District. And we have a big hole in our hearts that was where Pat used to be. And so we really miss her and thank her for her mentorship and volunteerism. Next slide. So this concludes this art walk tour. Next month, we'll be back with 3 more guests. We're not sure when we do return to in-person art walks, what day we're going to do it, but we will probably continue this through the end of the year. So I want to